I don't know what you need to do on your study sheet to remind you of this, but on the exam, a lot of students miss the point. If I ask you, hey, what's the mean and standard deviation of this table? 99% of the students will know I have to find the midpoint. That's not a problem. So they actually beautifully show me the midpoints that they've calculated. But when it's time to calculate the actual average and standard deviation, they forget to put this into L2. They just omit that part. So that's one thing I need you to remember. So if you go to 18, I had assigned this, but if you want to know the mean and the standard deviation, okay, of the following, so frequency table. Find midpoints. Then we're going to go one variable stats, L1, comma L2. That's so important. This part in particular. Don't forget that. Okay. So you have to say, hey, I'm going to find the midpoints. So you just add. That's the, in my opinion, this is the best way to do it. Just do it right beside it there. And so find the midpoints. So you go 2,000 plus 2,500 divided by 2. Just make sure you first add, then you divide by 2. Okay. So this would give you 2250. And then you do the same thing here, 2,500 plus 3,000. Right? I'm running out of room here. It's a bit tight, but I don't need you to show this every time anyways. This is just for you, for your notes. Okay, so one more time. And you should, when you look at your answer, make sure it is actually in between, right? If you get something that isn't in between, you should be like, wait a minute, I made a mistake in my calculation. Okay. So this is 2750. This would be 3250. This would be 3750. So sometimes you don't necessarily need to actually calculate it. You can just look at your values and determine it. But to be safe, we figure that out. Okay, so this is L1, this is L2. So one variable stats, L1, comma L2. We do not know. Someone organized our information. Look at this, right? Someone tallied it and organized it based on this table. So we don't actually know the individual salaries in this company. We don't. We just know that there's 2 employees that make anywhere between 2,000 and 2,500. That's all we know. So we kind of just say, okay, well, let's find the average. We'll just take the average for this category. We're assuming that both of those employees make about 2,250. And then 5 of these make about 2,750. So we're assuming that. Okay, so grab your calculators. Some of you might have to also tell yourselves how to find this. So we go 2250, 2750, 3250, 4250. 5 values. I missed one, didn't I? 3750. Forgot about 3750. Okay, over there you go 2, 5, 12, 5, 1. How many? Let's do the math right away. We've got 7 and 12, that's 19, and 1, that's 20, and 5, that's 25. Make sure you understand this, that you should have 25 at the end of the day. 25 values that we're considering. So stat, calculate. One variable stats. We'll never use 2 variable stats in this course. Never. So it's always one variable stats. Second 1, comma, second 2. There it is. The average income is $32.10. The standard deviation for this company is $467.33. I will write down N is 25, just to make sure you see that it's matching. What would happen if I forgot? I think most of you already know. If I just went like this, N is 5, because it's literally thinking you're only using these 5 salaries. That's all you're considering for your, that's not accurate. So you need to make sure you do L2 as well. Let's figure out the mean and the standard deviation of the previous one. I just wanted to first start with the frequency table. My guess is that most of you already figured this one out. This is not a frequency table. Okay, this is not a frequency table. This is just a bunch of information, data points individually given to you. Okay, so for that one, I will just tell you what it is because I want to move on. So to find the mean and the standard deviation and the range. Oh, it wants the range as well. We didn't do the range earlier. We'll do that yet. Just figure out the range here. You plug this all into L1. So this will be one variable stats L1. There is no L2 here because we don't need it. We have each individual data point given. So we have, you just copy this down, 3,835 and 25 cents. And my standard deviation is 914.22 cents. What is the range? If you did this already, you just take the highest, subtract the lowest. We have 37.50. Another thing that I'm going to add here is how many employees do we have here? N is equal to, we have 4 times 4, so we've got 16 employees that we're considering here. So this is company A. Company A actually was able to provide us with each individual salary, whereas company B didn't. Okay. So there we have it. Company B, let's go over here and also add employees. Okay. N is not just, it could be salaries or employees, it doesn't matter, but we're considering 25 there. Versus up here, we had 16 employees. I know I'm writing this down again, you already wrote it down, but I like to, emphasize the point. What's the range here? Let's figure out our range. We can only go by what's in our table. Okay, so we're going to go 4,500 minus 2,000. So you take the largest and the smallest possible. So that's 2,500. And here's what I want you to do. I think I always ask you a little like explain what you observe. Okay, let's do this for ourselves. For company A, our mean is 38, 35, 25. Our standard deviation is 914, 22. And our range is 3750. For company B, our mean is 3210. Exactly. Our standard deviation is 467.33. Our range is $2,500. And I think it's when you do this where you're able to better explain what you observe when you compare them side by side. And you can use either company's perspective, okay, guys? You don't have to talk about both. You can say, for example, if you want to come from company's A's perspective, you would say this. Let me see. Hold on. Let's try this again. I will say something like this. Employees in company A tend to earn more on average. Right? And I will say here higher mean. Higher mean. They have a higher mean. That's what it says there. I know it's hard to read, but it says higher mean at the very end there. So that's one observation you make. But the salaries in company A vary more since the standard deviation is also higher. What's another word that you could have used for vary? You could have said this: salaries in company A are more spread out. They're not consistent, right? Salaries are more inconsistent. So when it comes to standard deviation, I use the word more consistent or variation. They're more spread out. Okay, so you kind of have to be comfortable with that. And when it comes to, right, earn more, I refer to the higher mean. So on average, you have to say on average. Doesn't mean that every single time you're going to be making more in company A. Okay. In reality, you could say that company A, it could be that they pay very low at the beginning. So a starting wage is so low, but if you become the CEO of the company, you make quite a bit more. So there's a big gap. Your average looks good, but it's really just that one person raking in most of the money, right? So that's why we don't want variation in this case. I would say you want more consistency, because that means that everybody makes about or closer to what the average is as opposed to company A. So if I asked you which one would you choose, you could probably say, well, I would choose company B because a lower standard deviation means that there's more consistency in the pay. The average salaries are going to be closer to your average. Okay. All right. Um, by the way, you need to understand that a higher standard deviation will result in a higher range. See how a lower standard deviation gives you a lower range? Always goes hand in hand. In fact, if you wanted to talk about range instead of standard deviation here, that would have also been okay. But I tend to stick with standard deviation because that's what you're going to see a lot if you take statistics and post-secondary institutions. They would use standard deviation a lot. All right, okay, let's keep going. So, for example, anybody do this question on page 20? Can you raise your hand if you did 20? Okay, that's a good problem to have. I will ask you to, for now, I'm going to give you some time to work on the bowling question, like that involves actually the whole page, because I have two different bowling scenarios here. So one scenario does not have any frequency tables. Second scenario does have frequency tables. And I'm going to ask you to graph, and I provide you a nice grid there. So if you're smart with you're probably using these intervals, and then you'll be fine. You'll be able to fit that. Okay. If you're done 20, I will encourage you to continue working. I like 22 a lot. If you didn't do 22, I'm comparing two different fitness centers. They both have different frequency tables, but we are both able. Guys, the meat and potatoes of this section is mean and standard deviation. Try to figure that out. Try to extract it out of your data. And then using that, you do a little bit of digging deeper on that, okay? So I'm going to ask you to do 20 right now, and then if you're done 20, try page 22 as well. What are we at? 11:20. I would like to only spend 10 to 15 on this, and the key is online if you need to check. I'll assist you if you need help, but that's for now.